The Metropolitan Council Transportation Committee for February 27th, 2023. First order of business is approval of the agenda. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Sterner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacheco. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Next is approval of the February 13th, 2023 Transportation Committee meetings. If there are no changes or additions, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cummings. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacheco. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the minutes are approved. Now we're on to employee recognition. Turn it over to General Manager Leslie Kinderis.
All right, thank you, Chair Barber, members of the committee. Later in the agenda, you will hear some encouraging news about our efforts to recruit more bus operators. But before we get to that, we'd like to recognize 3 employees who, in their own ways, have helped bring about that good news. As you'll hear in a moment, each has played a part in not only recruiting more bus operators, but in supporting those who are already building their careers here. We'll have 3 presentations, one for each of our honorees today, starting with Bruce Howard, our Director of Marketing and Transit Information.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Transportation Committee. I'm Bruce Howard, Director of Marketing and Transit Information, and along with me today is Kelsey Stones. Kelsey's our Supervisor of Market Development, and Kelsey actually not too long ago celebrated her 25th anniversary here at Metro Transit, so congratulations for that. Now, over the years, she's worked on some of our most complex and important projects like light rail, commuter rail, Metro line launches. She's helped set up our go-to fare card system and worked on some of our larger special events like the Super Bowl and Final Four. But recently, we tapped her to be our point person for all things promotional when it came to our operator hiring initiatives. And just like she's done with a lot of her other projects, Kelsey jumped into this with both feet, and she soon found that that project was a full-time job and then some. And especially over the past couple of months as we prepared for and ultimately held our first Drive-a-Bus hiring event, which we held on February 4th, you may recall. Now, Kelsey was instrumental in planning, coordinating, executing the promotion and advertising to get the word out to the attendees so they could attend the event, and the event was, I would say, wildly successful. So you're going to hear a little bit more about that later on in the meeting today, so I won't go into the details, but just let me say here that I think thanks to Kelsey's dedication and determination and effort, we're turning the corner, I think, on our operator hiring challenges. And as a follow-up, Kelsey and the team are working on a new recruitment campaign that you'll be seeing very soon here in the region. So, Madam Chair, for all of her great work on our operator hiring initiatives, very pleased to present to you Kelsey Stones, one of our month's awarding accomplishment recipients.
And we'll hop up when everyone's done, and I'll give you a lovely plaque.
Chair Barber, our next honoree comes from the Transit Control Center. So I'd like to invite up Carrie Sampson, who's the Transit Control Center Supervisor, I think along with the manager too, to do this one.
Hello and good afternoon. My name is Carrie Sampson, and I am manager of the TCC, the Transit Control Center. I would like to present to you 2 of TCC's supervisors, Jack Buckey, who will be speaking about his coworker, and Joe Kalina, who will be spoken about.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jack Butke. I'm a supervisor in the control center for Metro Transit. Been there for a little over 8 or 9 years, and I'm here to recognize my fellow coworker, Joe Kleina, who's been there and just celebrated his 21st year. The control center is kind of the brains behind the beast at Metro Transit. We basically run all of the on-street operations from behind computers with 30 of our other coworkers. We dispatch for police and just monitor day-to-day operations. Recently, over the last couple of years, with all the new bus operators that we've had, we've noticed some issues with using radio issues and whatnot. And Joe took on that program and kind of beefed up the program and made sure our operators were very well equipped for using the radio usage. And over the last year or so, after working with instruction center staff, we've seen a great uptick in operators' abilities to use the radios and communicate effectively with us here on the control center, just to make sure that they stay on time, don't get lost, and provide our customers with the best service out there. So I'm here to recognize Joe Kleina for going above and beyond with his work with our bus operators on radio usage.
Very good, thank you.
And Madam Chair, our third honoree will be introduced by Kim Fleming, who's the manager at Reuter Garage.
Good afternoon. I'm Kimberly Fleming. I'm here today to celebrate Jerry Langer. I'm the manager at Reuter Garage, which will no longer be used for service operations beginning in March. To celebrate all the good times we've shared at this facility, staff gathered last week to share a meal and swap stories. We had a big farewell party there. People who have worked at Reuter have become attached to this facility, not because of the building itself, but because of people who work there. It's a family. A key member of this family is Jerry Langer, our instruction coordinator. Jerry has been absolutely instrumental in keeping the garage running smoothly. He also is a people person who always puts the needs of others above himself. He flexes his hours to meet with operators and talk about schedule changes, trains his peers on all facets of the job, and he's also our union steward. To give you a few examples, he often buys cards for employees who are experiencing a loss or celebrating a milestone. He asks all of us at the garage to sign the cards. And also when operators were facing challenges with the uniforms, he consolidated their concerns and helped find a resolution. He has worked tirelessly these past few months as the Reuter Garage coordinator, scheduling new operators for training at the new North Loop. Jerry does so many things for the garage. These examples barely scratch the surface. His great work ethic truly sets the standard, and he is an epitome of a great employee. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you all for your great work. If you want to come up, have some thoughts. Thank you for great. We always try to find a way to do this in a more organized way, and it never happens. So I'll just add an audio to everyone. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Thank you all again for all the great work. We really appreciate it. Next, we're on to reports. We have MTS Director Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, council members. A handful of items to report today. So applications for RAISE grants, this is a major federal discretionary grant program, are due to the U.S. Department of Transportation tomorrow. And we, as the council, wrote 11 letters of support for communities and projects across the region. 3 on local road systems, 2 are transit focused, including one that Metro Transit has submitted. 4 are on the state highway system, but submitted by local governments. And 2 are focused on the region's bike and pedestrian trail network. So wishing each of those projects well as US DOT considers them, and will later announce recipients. We also learned in the last week that Reconnect Rondo was selected for a $2 million planning grant from the US DOT. This project will study the planning and development of an African-American cultural enterprise district and options for establishing a land bridge over I-94 to restore and reconnect a portion of the Rondo neighborhood. So many congratulations to that joint effort. That was also with the city of St. Paul as a co-applicant. New state forecast was released, and that maintains a $17 billion surplus, which is great news at the surface level. But one level deeper, it's a bit more challenging on the transportation front. The new MVEST forecast behind that across the 5-year forecast is a $40 million reduction for transit funding. So we had seen a reduction before. Actually, in the November there was a bigger drop. Now there's another smaller drop in the forecast. Cumulatively, it's significant. So from a year ago, that results in about $162 million loss in the forecast over the 3-year period of that forecast, or about 7%. So something we'll continue to track. This February forecast is the basis from which the state will be making decisions. And as you all know, we have a structural deficit in place already, so this compounds that a bit. And more to come as these numbers are digested, but a piece of challenging news behind the headline of a major state surplus. And then finally, it's another Transportation Committee meeting in the winter, and that means it's another appreciation for the hard work that our staff, our colleagues, and our contractors do in transporting people in really harsh weather conditions over the last couple days. With the winter storm last week, we mobilized preparations early to inform customers of bad weather coming. Last Thursday, there were over 5,000 trips canceled. So that's great news. When customers can stay put, it preserves service capacity for others, and the 1,200 or so people that we transported last Thursday, we're able to do without really significant incident, thanks to the preservation of limited capacity for people who needed to travel. One of the biggest issues was folks arriving at their destination to find it was closed. And then that triggers a return trip, which keeps the driver from reaching their next destination efficiently. So that's one of the things that we tried to get people to call ahead and increased our messaging along the way. Today, slippery conditions on walking. So for a through-door service, very difficult when sidewalks aren't cleared, and today was definitely a very icy condition on a lot of sidewalks. That last 20 feet of a long trip can be the difference maker, and often is where the only icy conditions are encountered. So we're continuing to monitor that today. But on the storm as a whole, I think a high level of teamwork with our providers as always, but across divisions too. So close coordination between Metro Transit and MTS as we delivered our services through the poor weather. With that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Charles. Are there questions or comments? I have a couple. First of all, thank you for coordinating the letters of support for the RAISE grants. I mean, these are a lot of really good projects across the region. It really means a lot to our local partners, so I really appreciate that effort. And also appreciate bringing up the MVEST. It's something that we need to continue talking about, I think, both for transit and for transportation projects. Even though we have this big surplus, those sectors have been hit by how they're funded. So it's something we need to, when you see that big number, it gets lost sometimes. There are certain groups within the state government that get hurt by the current forecast, and we just happen to be one of them. So, thank you. All right, then we will go to Metro Transit General Manager Kim Darris.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I provide a few updates, I wanted to first acknowledge all the work of many Metro Transit departments and employees during the snowstorm last week. While snowstorms are nothing new from us or for us, as you heard from Director Carlson, that certainly doesn't diminish how much hard work it is to prepare for the storms, to maintain service, and provide safe facilities for our employees and our customers. So I do want to recognize all the transit employees across the council who really went above and beyond last week. My first update for you relates to Metro Transit's Network Now project. As you heard at your January 23rd Transportation Committee meeting, Network Now is Metro Transit's process for developing a plan for the next 5 years that continues to invest in improving our service as more resources such as additional operators are available. And this week, we're going to kick off the process of gathering feedback from community and from stakeholders by asking people about their values and their principles as it relates to transit service. One of the first steps will be a survey that'll be released this week. It'll be shared through a variety of electronic means, as well as outreach coordinators will go out into the system and into the community to gather as much input as we can through the survey. The survey will also be shared with our municipal partners and with Metro Transit employees. In addition to the survey, there'll be in-person engagement opportunities that will really get underway in April and May. And staff are also presenting at Metropolitan Council advisory committees, including the Equity Advisory Committee and the Transportation Accessibility Advisory Committee, to make sure we're fully engaging those committees in this work as well. So we'll be gathering feedback on the principles and values from our stakeholders throughout this first phase into mid-May. And the feedback that we're going to receive from this is going to help develop that decision-making framework to guide the next steps of the project. Switching gears, my second update pertains to our police department. Today, Ernest Morales III started at Metro Transit as the Director of Security and Police Services. As is standard and required when somebody relocates from another state, Mr. Morales will be serving in an administrative role until he's a licensed officer in the state of Minnesota, and he's going through that process now. These steps must be completed before Mr. Morales can officially serve as Metro Transit's Police Department Chief. And as a result, Interim Chief Rick Grates will continue to serve this interim role until that transition is complete. We know council members are eager to meet with Mr. Morales, and I want to assure you we know that, and we're working to create opportunities for that. And we're also developing plans to make sure he's spending time out in the system, meeting with our employees, meeting with a variety of stakeholders, and just really getting to know our system and the opportunities and challenges we're facing as it relates to public safety. We are planning to have Director Morales come to this week's Committee of the Whole meeting to be introduced, so that'll be an opportunity for you to meet him. And in addition to Mr. Morales joining the department this week, I wanted to mention we have just recently refreshed our Community Service Officer, or CSO, posting. Back in July, the council increased CSO wages to $25 an hour, but now we're able to also advertise an up to $18,000 tuition reimbursement benefit. So as was mentioned previously in one of our information items tonight, you are going to hear more about operator hiring and retention efforts, but our police department is also really employing as many tactics as are available to them to build up their workforce as well. So with that, Madam Chair, I take any questions.
Thank you, Leslie. Questions or comments, council members? All I have is a big welcome to Mr. Morales and congratulations, and we look forward to working with him. But also, I want to give a really good big thank you for Interim Chief Rick Grates, who has done an exceptional job. And yeah, I'll extend my gratitude to him.
Do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to our tab liaison. We have Mr. Dugan. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, honorable council members. Director Carlson, Acting General Manager Candaris. And I see Mr. Thompson out there in the back, the Deputy Director. And of course, Jenna, you keep it all running. Thank you. I'm going to report on two items. One is the Transportation Policy Plan update. I see Mr. Fredson likes my introduction. He loves it. The Transportation Policy Plan update, particularly the listening sessions and the regional solicitation, just a brief catch-up on where we are. Councilmember Sterner and Director Carlson were at the TPP, Transportation Policy Plan listening session in Dakota County today. So I asked them if, I'll make some remarks on that, but I'll ask them to certainly fill in where I may not include something. The the principle of the TPP is it sets the goals and the policy, it sets the policy for the goals and objective of the regional transportation system. The listening sessions are not to determine the goals and policy. That's your purview. It's to give recommendations and feedback on what others are saying. So I want to make that clear. And of course, the 2040 TPP was part of Thrive 2040. It will be replaced by 2050, and I'm not sure what the name of that will be, to be enacted in 2024, okay? There'll be a quiz on the dates. Okay. Then, and what the listening sessions and there's listening sessions and a review of the 2040 plan, primarily to determine where did we go wrong, where did we go right, what do we need to change. And so there'll be, the first step is a summary of all the existing plans, which is being done. The second is the engagement or the listening sessions. And then the third component will be equity engagement. They've hired an equity engagement consultant, perhaps Director Carlson could speak to that. And that function will go out to all the community organizations across the region, both for surveys and direct interviews to get their input. And then the last is the evaluation of the 2040 plan. And then this is anticipated to be to you, I believe, by May, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, let me see. Oh, and one of the primary things that have come up in listening sessions and also the review is, where can the limited resources be put to the highest use? Because we all are dealing with that. And if I may, some of the comments thank you. Some of the comments that were made today in summary were, I thought an interesting one, that one of the Dakota County Commissioners mentioned that since the regional solicitation appropriates funds in a sense based on population and usage, that with more folks telecommuting and not going into the city, is that unfair to the suburbs where they're staying and using the roads more and the transit more? And that was a point made. Also, one of the, I believe she is a Dakota County planner, I believe. She was asking how will growing areas, suburbs particularly, or counties, deal with reduced carbon reduction and vehicle miles traveled, VMT, if they're growing. I thought that was an interesting comment. In terms of the transportation stewardship, one of the things that was brought up was it appears to be, the planning appears to be a little top-down with, requirements made but money not given. And under one of the pillars of the plan is equity and housing. And a member brought up that if the TPP does not address all needs, then it's really not equitable. It's favoring one group or place over another. And probably that's the overarching word that I've been on 2 listening sessions, and one of the people I've talked to is the TPP must meet everyone who's a stakeholder, to use Leslie's word, thank you, must see that their concerns are there, and they were looked at and met. Perhaps not addressed fully, but they were met. They were at least talked to. And in regard to the regional solicitation, as I'm sure you know, it starts with the Department of Transportation, then goes to the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Transit Administration, and MnDOT for the local disbursement of the funds. And that's through what is called the FAST Act, Fixing America's Surface Transportation. And that gets money from the the STBG, Surface Transportation Block Group, and the CMAQ, Congestion Mitigation Funds. And so that's how it breaks down and to you and then to the tab to disperse the funds in a competitive environment. It is anticipated, and of course, perhaps Mr. Carlson will know more than I do about this, but the 2026 and 2027 regional solicitation funds should be the same as today, but that no no money has officially been set aside. And in 2022, there were several major updates to the regional solicitation application, which will likely be repeated in 2024. One is pedestrian safety was updated. Equity and affordable housing was updated. The safety area was given a lot of priority because of the number of crashes in the serious injury and fatal fatalities, and I'll bring that up in just a second. And then a section on purpose statement for the applicant to say, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, or asking what I'm asking. And in terms of fatalities, for the period through February 12th, Minnesota is at the same level of fatalities, 20, as it was at this period in 2022. However, the contribution of speed and distraction has gone up significantly, the contribution to accidents of speed and distraction, whereas the alcohol and unbelted has decreased. And the number of pedestrian, bicycles, and motorcycle accidents has remained somewhat flat. Doesn't mean it's not happening, it just hasn't increased or decreased. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Peter. Questions or comments for Mr. Gann? Councilmember Sterner.
Thank you, Chair. I just was going to add a couple of things that I got out of it.
Thank you.
When the county commissioners was mentioning that the southern part of the county, that Hastings and Lakeville and Northfield were some of the destination areas, so they kind of were talking about discussion, what is considered destination, with it. It's not always going upstream, it might be just going uptown or to the local community. And I think one of the places they felt like equity was if you're out in the rural area getting rides into town, there's not really that public transportation for them to go that route. And Dakota County was looking for more bike trails in that I think they're used quite a bit and don't just see them as recreational because some people go to work that way with the bike trails as well and get around with their shopping. And I think there's one more thing. I think I just had one more point to make, and I'm going to reverse the order here. Let's give me a minute on it. Maybe if Charles has something, I'll remember it again.
Madam Chair, I would just say, it's been great to have these listening sessions around the region. We've done a number of them at this point, and we have several additional planned, as well as the equity engagement side of things that's happening in parallel. I think really important for us to get out before we have content for folks to react to. So it's really a listening, what looking at the 2040 plan, what works, what doesn't, where do you see yourself in this? Because ultimately our measure of success is, can we deliver regional priorities, but also have people view it as a regional plan and not the council's plan when we're all said and done.
I did remember my last point there. So they were saying when the development of the roads came out, a lot of the state roads aren't as well developed in Dakota County as they are in other areas. So like 13 and Dodd Boulevard and South Robert Trail are really far behind as far as safety and development in that. And most of the county roads, they have more county road miles than I think a lot of the other counties in the area that they're built out. But they're concerned about there's no state dollars on the roads in that end. So.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may just follow up on Councilmember Sterner's explanation of destination. I thought that was really, I'm glad you brought that up. That was a really good insight. I think it was Commissioner Slavic.
Yeah, Slavic from Hastings.
That the thought was that destinations mean employment, hospital, grocery, those type of things, education, whereas for some folks, it means the Dakota County Park, which you must have a car to get to, or as Councilmember Sterner said, if you're living more rural, you need that car to get to the destination, which may be 10, 15 minutes, or 10, 15 miles away. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you all for your comments. There's no other questions or comments. We'll move on to our business for the evening. The first item is the consent agenda. There are 3 items on consent, and I would entertain a motion to approve the items on consent.
I would make a motion to approve the items on consent.
Moved by Councilmember Sterner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacheco. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and the motion passes. On to our first items on non-consent. First item is business number 2023-17, Metro B line, and it's the Ramsey County Cooperative Construction Agreement. We have Frank Alarcon. I'm going to say it right eventually, I promise. How do you say it for me?
Alarcon.
Alarcon, okay. And you'll be here for the first two business items.
Good afternoon, Chair Barber, committee members. I'm Frank Alarcon, project manager in the arterial BRT department with Metro Transit. Business item 2023-17 is to authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute Agreement 22I-053 with Ramsey County to receive approximately $900,000 of county funds for county-requested improvements along the Metro B-Line corridor. Ramsey County has identified the need to construct signal improvements and implement lane restriping along Marshall Avenue between the Mississippi River and Fairview Avenue to improve safety and operations. You may recall a similar business item before this committee in November for a similar agreement with Hennepin County for a similar set of improvements along Lake Street. These Ramsey County requested Marshall Avenue improvements, which go beyond the ADA-compliant B-Line station investments to further address the needs of the county's roadway system, will be delivered within the B-Line's construction contract held by Metro Transit. This agreement includes Ramsey County costs for design, construction, and construction administration for the Marshall Avenue improvements. The Marshall Avenue improvements, which are expected to be constructed this year, will also benefit the B-Line by allowing more widespread use of transit advantages along Marshall Avenue. In closing, business item 2023-17 requests that the council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute Agreement 22I-053 with Ramsey County to receive approximately $900,000 of county funds for county requested improvements along the Metro B-Line corridor.
Very good, thank you. Questions or comments? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2023-17.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Fredson. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Cummings. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. And back to you for business item 2023-50.
Thank you again, Chair Barber, committee members. This also has to do with the local improvements along the B-Line project. Business item 2023-50 is to authorize the regional administrator to execute Amendment 1 to Contract 20P322 with Kimley Horn and Associates, Incorporated, for engineering and construction administration services for the Metro B-Line project, to increase the contract value by $1,649,389 for a revised contract value not to exceed $11,407,899. The additional work associated with this contract amendment is the result of two interrelated changes to the B-Line project resulting from Metro Transit's coordination with our agency partners along the corridor. One of those changes is a revised approach to construction packaging, and the second is the addition of local improvements requested by Hennepin and Ramsey counties, including the improvements captured in the previous business item this evening. Regarding construction packaging, the initial scope for this contract assumed preparation of one set of construction documents to construct the entire B-Line project. In early 2022, Metro Transit, with input from our project partners, made the decision to split the B-Line into two construction packages. The East package, which includes the B-Line stations to the east of Hiawatha Avenue and will be constructed in 2023, and the West package, which includes B-Line stations west of Hiawatha Avenue and will be constructed the following year in 2024. So this two-package approach allows the B-Line to maintain its overall construction schedule while allowing enough time to incorporate extensive local improvements along Lake Street into the B-Line project. The additional effort required to design and administer construction of these local improvements is the other reason for this amendment. As part of this contract amendment, resources will be added for Kimley Horn to complete the design of local improvements in the West construction package and provide support services during the construction of the local improvements in the East construction package. Approximately 80% of the funding for this amendment will be provided by the two counties through interagency agreements. There's a DBE goal of 16% on contract 20P 322. Kimley Horn has repeatedly met this goal and will maintain its DBE utilization with this contract amendment. In closing, business item 2023-50 requests that the council authorize the regional administrator to execute Amendment 1 to Contract 20P322 with Kimley Horn and Associates, Inc. for engineering and construction administration services for the Metro B Line project to increase the contract value by $1,649,389 for a revised contract value not to exceed $11,407,899.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council members? All right, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2023-50.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cummings. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Frenson. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we're on to business item 2023-52. It's procurement of 18 accessible minivans for Metro Mobility. We have Paul Colton. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Barber, committee members. This afternoon I have for you item 2023-52. I'm Paul Colton, Fleet Manager for MTS. And the recommendation is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute contract 23P030 with Creative Bus Sales for up to 18 accessible minivans in an amount not to exceed $1,350,000. This action is contingent upon council approval of the authorized capital program amendment on March 8th through business item 2023-35JT. And that is the capital amendment that you all voted on 2 weeks ago. So to continue our story of the MTS fleet, this is our opportunity to purchase some fleet to get it into Metro Mobility service as a result of difficulties in getting our small buses built. And I am happy to report that we've got 4 that have arrived now. We've got 14 in transit to Minnesota. So it's happening. So I feel really good about that. We'll have some new fleet on the road here in March and into April and into May. And so that will certainly help us with our state of good repair. These minivans are also an opportunity for us to do multiple things. So we can test this smaller piece of equipment, which our contractors have told us may help us to attract other drivers because they're a little bit easier to handle. It's something that people are used to driving more so than a bus. So we'll see if that happens. We'll also get a flavor for how well these hold up in the very rugged service that we do in Metro Mobility, operating 18 hours a day. What kind of maintenance issues will we have with them? But we're not ordering so many that we're putting ourselves in any jeopardy. These will serve as expansion fleet for the time being. So adding it to our fleet, we won't replace anything with it. So the supply chain is improving, but the last 2 years have been really difficult on us. So we've seen a 70% reduction in chassis manufacturing out of Ford. The minivans have not had as many issues with production, and so we believe that we'll have these by May or no later than the beginning of June once these are once this order is put in. So we're using the state of Oklahoma contract. It's an interesting contract. It's got a wide variety of small vehicle fleet for transit on it. It's open to any public agency. The Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma basically reviewed their RFP and put a letter in once they were receiving inquiries from other public agencies and just said it's open to anybody. You don't need to let us know If you're purchasing from it, we don't need a letter of intent from the state, any state or public agency using it. So it's a very open contract and a very interesting letter that's within their procurement file. So I just bring that up because I know with the state of Washington, we went through a lot of detail and a lot of formality with the state of Washington. And finally, the funding for this, again, will be using RTC, so there aren't any federal monies involved, and that will expedite also our process with this contract. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Are there questions or comments? Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is really interesting, and with the struggles that we're having obtaining minivans, if this proves to be reliable, do you see us expanding and using this purchasing agreement through the state of Oklahoma further, or is this a one and done?
Council member, committee member, so we're going to evaluate this. And one of our thoughts, we've already discussed this, if this is successful, if it meets a particular market niche in metromobility and maintenance is favorable, we may go out for our own RFP to procure minivans, say in the fall or something like that, once we've had a chance to evaluate the operability of these units.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Right, additional questions or comments? Councilmember Sterner.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondering who the manufacturer is on these mini buses or vans, I guess.
Chair Barber, council member. So these are Chrysler Voyager minivans. So they're the biggest minivan we can get. And then they go to Braun Manufacturing in Indiana for the conversion. They pull the whole body off, they replace the floor, they lower it, they make it accessible, and then it meets all the ADA requirements after they're done modifying it. So it's called a Braun Ability minivan based off of the Chrysler Voyager chassis.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any additional questions, comments? All right, now say the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute contract 23P030 with Creative Bus Sales for up to 18 accessible minivans in an amount not to exceed $1.35 million. This action is contingent upon council approval of the authorized capital program amendment on March 8th through business item 2023-35 JT. So I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to
Moved by
approve.
Councilmember Sterner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Cummings. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Oh, you're here for the next one too, 2023-42.
Right, thank you. So in 2023-42, the recommendation is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute contract 23P032 with Motor Coach Industries for up to 4 replacement electric propulsion motor coach buses in an amount not to exceed $5,395,968. This action is also contingent upon council approval of the authorized capital program amendment on March 8th through business item 2023-35JT. This will be our first electric fleet purchase on the MTS side, working with Southwest Transit. They were awarded, applied for low-no funds, and they were one of the successful applicants. We are now in the process of putting the official grant together to receive the funds from the FTA. And so for now, we are utilizing the RTC funding so that we might order these vehicles ahead of the contract year change on the state of Washington contract to take advantage of the current pricing. And so by using the RTC funds, that will allow us to do that. Once we have sign off from the FTA on the grant that has these vehicles in it, we will replace that 85% of that RTC funding with the federal funds. So, and we'll repurpose that RTC funding for other fleet projects. So the four coaches are replacement coaches. These will replace units that have exceeded their useful life, and hopefully can be placed into service in the fall of 2024. We expect to receive them in the summer of 2024 from MCI Coach. These are being procured off of the state of Washington contract. which the council now has a written approval with the state of Washington to use their contract. And with that, I would be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this grant is guaranteed. It's not at risk that the FTA may change their mind, or it's already been approved?
It's, Chair Barber, council member, yes, it's been approved by the FTA.
Okay.
And now we have to just go through the process of getting our grant funds, our ducks in a row, as they say, on the paperwork, and they'll review it, ask us some questions, and approve it, and then we can move forward with bringing that into the next quarterly amendment or the third quarter amendment, depending on the timing.
Councilmember Cummings.
Quick follow-up. These are interesting business items that are coming forward, and they seem to me different from the usual way we do things, but I know in these challenging times, it's really interesting that, and thank you to staff for going ahead and looking at different ways that we can procure these things that we need in these times of shortage and increasing prices and so forth. So I think the creativity and the ability to kind of pivot and use different sources for these is just excellent. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, and thank you. And I don't think we're done yet.
With that, I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2023-42.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cummings. Is there a second?
Second.
Then by Councilmember Pacheco. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very good. And so, council members, I think for what we have tonight, I think all of these items can go to on consent to the full council. I agree. All right, for the March 8th meeting. Thank you. Now we move over to information. And their first is the quarterly service and workforce update. And we have Jonathan Brown, Marilyn Porter, and Adam Harrington. Welcome, everyone.
Good afternoon. We'll be presenting workforce and service changes for March 2023. My name is Jonathan Brown. I'm the interim deputy director for garage operations. I'll be presenting workforce changes and updates. Marilyn Porter, director of engineering, will present on the Reuter garage closing and North Loop opening. And Adam Harrington will present on the routine service changes for the March pick. This chart shows a snapshot of our bus operator hiring and actual versus budgeted and planned from pre-pandemic numbers to current. Right now we are at 1043, above our planned. First time we've been above the plan for quite some time. And currently above the plan so that we can provide the service that we promise to our customers. I'm going to do a recap of the bus operator hiring event on February 4th. This was a Drive the Bus event, first one of its kind. It was a screaming success, lots of media coverage. The awarding accomplishments winner, Kelsey Stones, did a great job in promoting this. We had social media, Shaletta Brundridge, CCO 830, CARE 11, KSTP, and I will play this if I can. Whoops, I think I made a mistake there. There we go.
It's time we get back into the family business and become bus drivers.
It's just a quick video of the North Loop Garage. There was we had a bus operator who was a relief instructor from the Nicollet Garage, basically drive that bus for us. He's a model for this.
Here's the best part. You can test
There's volume also, but
you can kind of hear it.
You can kind of hear it.
And don't worry, staff members will be on hand to help you navigate that thing. But you got this. And they've got up to a $5,000 sign-on bonus for you if you get hired. Now, all y'all know we got kinfolk who have been Metro Transit bus drivers. Either your uncle, your cousin, grandpa, somebody. And they always had extra money in their pocket because this job pays well. And they've got good benefits. It's time we get back into the family business and become drivers. So get on over to the Metro Transit Bus Operator Hiring Event on Saturday, February 4th from 9 until noon and apply for one of these positions. You don't need experience and they'll pay for your training. You can't beat that. Just make sure you bring a valid driver's license and bring a friend. The more, the merrier. For more info, just go to metrotransit.org/drive.
So the process was, we used the downstairs conference room to welcome people in. They had paperwork to complete, checked in there, came upstairs. If they needed to apply for the job, we had application assistance. Once they were done with the application, they checked in and then were interviewed. The big draw, of course, was the ability to drive the bus. We had about 120 people do that. And while they were driving the bus, we took pictures, had them pose in front of the bus, took pictures with their phones, took pictures with our cameras, and used it for social media. We had a little kids' play area also. We had maintenance there, and Metro Transit Police Department. Now, organizing this huge event was interesting, to say the least. We had human resources and workforce, bus transportation, of course, marketing and PR. You saw the great marketing. Engineering facilities, because the building was technically not quite open yet. Bus maintenance, Metro Transit Police, safety and our system safety department, and event ambassadors helping people to get into the parking lot. By the numbers, we had about 7 planning meetings and 2 on-site walkthroughs. About 60 staff helped to organize the event and were on site that day to help applicants. We arrived at about 7:30 a.m. and the first applicant arrived at 8:45 a.m. We closed the doors at about 12:10, and the last person to get in the bus seat and drive was at 3:05. We had 156 people attend that went through the process. There were probably about 20 to 30 more that actually just came to drive the bus. Of course, you had an opportunity to drive a bus when you never had to before. I'd take it also. 140 completed an interview, and about 120 drove the bus, as I said. We had 117 of those people pass the interview. 25 moved to background check, meaning that they've already got either a Class A or B license. They already have a CDL. So those people get fast track. They go through the background check and drug test after that, and they're ready to be hired. 92 needed a commercial learner's permit. This is one of the big hurdles for us. Previously, we did not allow people to be hired without a learner's permit, and they really had to do that on their own. We've been offering an opportunity for them to take either online or in-person study sessions, but unpaid. The difference now is that we've added a week to our training, calling it Week 0, and we had 63 people interested in Week 0. 29 said they would take the learner's permit test on their own. I want to talk about what we're doing also to retain our operators. Before I get to that, I'm sorry. For CLP Week 0, we've had a few people start. We had 2 started on 123, 1 completed. On 130, we had 1 start and 1 completed already. 260, we did not have anyone start, but on 213, we had 1 start. The train operator staffing is important here also because we're consolidating our process. We currently have 86 train operators. Our target is 95. We had the system pick, the declared system pick. This is generally when train operators will be able to return to bus after they've completed their commitment. We had no one return to bus, though, which is a great thing for train. External train operator applicants for the first time. On 220, we have 2 Week 0 rail operators starting. And on 227, we have 6 rail operators scheduled to start. Any future postings for operators will include rail and bus. We'll strategically start rail so that they'll be able to make their training, though, because it's a 12-week process. And actually a 14-week process because they'll need to go through the CDO at the bus training center. And now I'll talk about our retention strategies. We've enhanced our probation. Our previous probation model, we've doubled it from what we initially had, more than doubled actually. These are touch points with both their instructor and their manager to make sure that they are comfortable operating their route, comfortable handling our customers. The other big thing that we do is Red Kite. It's resilience training. It was initially developed for frontline employees, EMTs, first responders. It's been developed, massaged a little bit to welcome bus operators, rail operators, and other frontline employees. It's a 3 8-hour class training, and we've had 818 participants participate since November 2016. For the retention training, and the one we've been using is Red Kite, but we put an RFP out for resilience training, I'm sorry, and that is in the proposal stage. Another great thing that we've added for retention is the bus operator apprenticeship. We are the second agency in the nation to have a bus operator apprenticeship. It's a 2-year program that pairs a new bus operator with a mentor. They have several meetings during their probationary period and beyond through that 2-year period. And right now we are at 185 apprentices and 60 mentors. So mentors have more than one apprentice assigned to them. I will pass to Marilyn Porter.
There you go. While you pass up, I will ask if there's any questions or comments. Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Phenomenally successful, it sounds like. Are you thinking about doing it again? And if so, what lessons did you learn from the first time out on the driver bus that you would maybe tweak a little bit the next time around? I know it's early on and you're still digesting everything that you learned, but I'm just curious, what are your first impressions and takeaways that you might do again?
Number one on that list is more buses, so we can get people through the course a little bit quicker.
Mm-hmm.
We had enough instructors there. We needed maybe 1 or 2 more buses to just speed it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that in this building, in pre-pandemic, right before the pandemic, we had a hiring event, a 1-day hiring event, where we actually did drug testing also. We had 267 people come to that event. And unfortunately, the pandemic happened, and we couldn't hire those people, unfortunately. And so we learned a lot from that event, incorporated it into this one. And the addition was to drive the bus. So we've pretty much got it down, we think. We allow people to apply right on site. We've shortened the application to make it simpler. And we can get people through pretty quickly.
Councilmember Cummings.
Just a quick follow-up. So as labor intensive as it is, first of all, thank you all for doing this. I think it sounds great and creative and thoughtful and all of those things. Would this be something you might do annually or twice a year, or do you have any idea on that?
Actually, we're considering doing a drive the train event also, and we will bring this back. We don't know when yet, but we will do this again because it's the drive the bus again was a draw, and we had so many people interested in doing it.
Great. Well, thank you.
Okay. Anything additional? Just quick. I was like very impressed with the creativity with this and really the communication about it, because I heard about it before, during, after, whether it was social media, there was so much information out there about it. And I think that really helps, get people there. And I love that there's the follow-up, and we're actually kind of, it's the creativity, not just in the event, but in improving and streamlining some of the hiring process, which is what really is making the difference. So really, thank you.
I will also say that the media helped a lot, because I had people who said I saw this on the news today, and came down and applied and drove the bus.
I love to hear it. That's awesome. All right, we'll turn it to Marilyn now, who's going to talk about the North Loop Garage opening.
Thank you. Madam Chair, committee members, I'm here, as Jonathan mentioned, to talk about the North Loop opening. And before doing so, I'll just provide a little bit of a project description. Just remind folks, I think some of you have probably taken a tour of the garage. So just as a reminder, it's an 11-acre site, the North Loop. It includes bus maintenance and storage facilities, about 330,000 square feet, and it's a 200 bus storage capacity. Also houses basic maintenance for minor repairs and home base for buses and drivers. In terms of the timeline for the opening, we're looking at January through March 2023 for revenue service. We'll finalize the commissioning and punch list work. We'll also, equipment delivery and setup is expected, the fluids and parts, and internal coordination, which is happening as we speak. There's lots of internal meetings going on. March 18th, 2023, we'll begin the daily operations from the new garage. So with that, I will turn it over to Adam.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Adam Harrington. I'm the Director of Service Development, and it is pretty exciting to open this new facility. It's a big transition for us, and this snapshot is a scope out from the footprint that Marilyn shared looking at our campus, and the purpose of this is just to illustrate where our garages are located in our system. The blue lines are all of our bus routes, so you can see that they're strategically located around the system. And the one little minus mark up on the north end is where Martin J. Reuter Garage is, and that's going to be closing to revenue service for our bus system on March 18th as well. And now we're going to have a good focus of a lion's share of our service in the core of our system, which really is where the majority of our service is deployed to serve at this point. So we're really excited about it. It's a lot of work that went into that, as you can see. And so there's a lot of scheduling work that goes into it too, because we need to move bus operators and buses and assignments to different garages. And by and large, that means moving most of those services to the Haywood Garage at that same campus and distributing the service that was in Haywood Garage to adjacent facilities as well. So our goal is, when we think about moving our service around, to make sure we can do it efficiently based on where those routes are located geographically in the system and how we can fit them together efficiently. And while we're doing that, we also want to pay special attention to how we consolidate our fleets. We have a number of sub-fleets at Metro Transit. There's arterial bus rapid transit buses, there's electric bus rapid transit buses, there's articulated buses, 40-foot buses, a variety of things that we have that we need to manage. And it's important not only for the service deployment based on which garage they're operating from, but also from a maintenance perspective so that our maintenance team can manage that efficiently. So a quick snapshot here. This is just gives you a flavor for how we're going to be assigning these routes and looking at the BRT lines in particular because they are their own sub-fleet in many ways. And so most of them will be at Haywood and South for these BRT lines. And as you know, Haywood Garage is outfitted for electric bus charging, and so C-Line will continue to be there. But we are also looking to improve the electric charging system at both the North Loop Garage, which is accommodating and designed to handle that, as well as making modifications at East Metro in the future for some of those East Side corridor routes as well. This chart's a little bit hard to see, but the point of it is really the last two columns on the right that shows how we've shifted bus assignments across all these garages. And really our challenge has been historically that Haywood Garage has had a lot of buses assigned to it, and there's some capacity challenges that we have. And so when we look at the planning estimate for the December service new garage, that shows the balance of buses that are assigned to each one. And our goal is to make them very similar to each other. East Metro Garage still clocks over 100 buses that are assigned there, and that's by the geographical nature of it. The East Metro network is really focused on that particular facility. So we've got a good balance. We're really paying special attention to how we deploy these services and where the buses are allocated. A little bit more detail. Again, the shift between Haywood Garage and North Loop Garage, the routes that are assigned there. Another one of the subfleets we have is we contract with Maple Grove Transit Service, and so we operate their buses and their unique branding that are grouped together as well. So we're mindful about making sure we've got consistent deployment there as we move those services all from Reuter Garage down to Haywood Garage. So a little bit on some of the future service changes, and I'm happy to say that this is the first time in a long time that I'm not going to tell you about all the service reductions we're making for the next pick. So thanks to Donathan and Marilyn and the whole team to really help us turn the corner on that. And so right now, we've got this big garage change that's a focus to make sure we've got our operators trained. You saw the chart at the beginning that Donathan showed, and there's a line that's a little bit higher than maybe you would have seen previously that shows we have more bus operators than service scheduled, but we really need that extra capacity to help train our bus operators on the new routes that they're going to be operating out of the North Loop Garage. So that's going to be a big help and has been a help over the past few weeks, but also because we've got some detours that we're planning on coming up, and the coordination that we have with cities and counties is really important. In downtown St. Paul here, the city has planned construction for Minnesota and Kellogg starting this summer, and so we've got a number of detour routings planned in downtown St. Paul. And that has a resource impact to us, but also we need to make sure we're providing clarity to our customers and where our service is going to be operating as the city reconstructs Robert Street in the future, but Minnesota and Kellogg is part of this project. So just a preview of what's to come in downtown St. Paul this summer, and we'll be making adjustments in June to accommodate this project. Another big project in Hennepin County is on Osseo Road. Hennepin County is planning to make a number of changes and adjustments to the Osseo Road Bridge. The bridge will be redecked. There's a number of improvements to the corridor from a safety and accessibility standpoint, but also Green Street's perspective on how that street is constructed, as well as including our BRT station that will serve C and D line in that corridor. So it's a major detour because if you're familiar with the Northwest Metro, this is the primary route between North Minneapolis and Brooklyn Center, and the detour routing shown here, which we'll be putting into place when this project begins, adds about 3 to 5 minutes depending on direction and time of day. So that's going to be a resource add to all of these routes. And so again, we need those extra bus operators to help manage the service when we get there. A couple other changes just to make mention of. Route 7, which operates over Plymouth Avenue to Theoworth Trailhead in North Minneapolis. We're working with the Parks Board to make some adjustments to the layover location. We started operating over to the new Lapa Trailhead over a year ago, and they have some challenges with congestions in their parking lot and the parking area, so we're working with them to minimize the amount of time that the bus spends in that lot as they have a lot of traffic in and out. So we're continuing to serve the trailhead, but we're moving the layover over to Plymouth Avenue at their request and working with them to come to agreement on how we solidify that, meeting our state statute requirements there. But there's no service level change that's associated with it. On the south end of Route 7, or excuse me, before I get to the south end, the Plymouth Avenue detour, there's also construction happening on Plymouth Avenue over 94, and so we're identifying a detour route here that'll also take some additional time this coming season. And then on the south end, we're eliminating a branch that operated over to the VA, really had very, very few riders, and those customers have an alternate on the Route 515 and the Blue Line as well. So with that, that concludes our presentation, and we're happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments from council members? Quick one, we got a tour of the North Loop Garage not long ago, and what an amazing facility. I mean, it's just very, very impressive. I think it's just, it's going to be so beneficial to the whole organization, I think. So it was lovely. And thank you for coming with not reporting any new service reductions. We appreciate it very much. But yes, thank you all. Appreciate it. Great work.
Thank you.
Now we're on to Metro Transit Micro Performance Update. We have Sheila Holbrook-White and Victoria Dan here.
Hello, good evening, Madam
evening.
Chair, committee members. All right, I'm just getting myself situated. I'll look over there. Very pleased to provide you this update on the Metro Transit Micro Pilot. My name is Victoria Dan, Senior Planner with Metro Transit Service Development. I am joined by my counterpart from MTS, Sheila Holbrook-Wright, who is the Waiver Transportation Manager. So in this presentation that we'll provide today, we'll start with a bit of a recap just to remind us all who is involved in this pilot, what we began with at launch and where we've been since then, a bit of a trend snapshot for some data highlights on this program. We'll go over our expansion and adjustments to service that just went into effect over the weekend. And we'll talk about what that means for service area characteristics for this pilot. Then we'll wrap up with next steps as we look out toward the next 6 months or so. So to start with our recap, I'd just like to remind us all who has been involved on this pilot. So of course, Metro Transit has been involved primarily in planning, marketing, and outreach. MTS has been a major partner in overseeing operations and working closely with Transit Team, who is our service operator and is also an experienced Metro Mobility operator in the area as well. I'll also note that Abe Youngbauer is in the audience today from Transit Team. Excellent partners to be working with on this pilot project. And lastly, I'll note that our software provider, providing the technology and proprietary algorithms and things of that nature for this service, is VIA. So when we began this pilot, we had 3 overarching goals in mind. The first is to expand mobility choices, especially for low-income and communities of color. The second, to expand access to the high-frequency network. And the third, to test technology and the service model. So the service model, namely microtransit, it's a form of on-demand ride sharing that's powered by algorithms and technologies and is app-enabled for riders. This is not the first microtransit service in the region. There are a number of services operated by suburban transit providers, but this is the first urban pilot in the region, and it's the first pilot for Metro Transit and MTS at the council. So this map on the right shows us the boundaries that we began with at launch on September 10th, 2022. So the labels are quite small here, but essentially we're bounded by I-94, I-394, Xerxes or Theoworth Park, Golden Valley Road, and West Broadway in North Minneapolis. This is a 12-month pilot, so we've got about 6 months to go, ending roughly in September 2023. This zone serves equity populations, so namely low-income and BIPOC populations, among other characteristics and attributes. This service is also in a zone that connects with a number of fixed routes, including arterial bus rapid transit C and D lines. As I mentioned, this is rider app enabled, but we also do provide a call-in option for those who either need to or prefer to talk to a reservationist in person to make their booking. And we also, up through this weekend, operated this service 7 days a week from 5 a.m. to midnight, and I'll bring you up to speed on what some of those service changes are going to look like shortly. Hand it off to Sheila.
Thank you. Madam Chair and committee members, I'd like to provide you with an overview of Micro since a pilot launched in September, and this is through January 31 of 2023. So between September 10 and January 31st, there have been 6,844 customer boardings on Micro. And so what I'd like to provide you is some context to that information. As you can see in the graph, growth has been exceptionally steep. We've had a 6-fold increase between the initiation of the pilot in September through the end of January. And as this graph also makes clear, nearly 2 in 5 of these one-way trips occurred in January alone. Only jumping on, just stealing your thunder slightly, we exceeded the January number in the month of February yesterday. So that growth is continuing to go at that steep fold. While the growth of trips is noteworthy, there is a significant customer story that is embedded in these figures. Of these micro boardings, more than half of these represent 2 or more people who are traveling together. So we are seeing parents with children, we're seeing friends traveling together, and I think this is a slightly different, perhaps, feel for the services that we're able to offer through micro, where we see the social component built in. Rider experience, with plans to further discuss the rider rating element in an upcoming slide. Service has remained remarkably consistent for the passenger. Since our September pilot launch, passengers are picked up within 7 minutes of that request. They are on board for an average of 8 minutes, and they travel for 1.4 miles. I'm going to take your attention to the graph to the right. As that graph trend line shows, average rides per driver hour, or the utilization rate, has grown significantly over time. And specifically in January, when we hit 2 per hour. Context is particularly important for this metric. At 2 rides per hour with a $29.04 subsidy, micro currently compares similarly to that of TransitLink, the Council's region-wide general public demand response service. I want to give you a little bit more feedback on January, because you just saw that quick snapshot. What the overall ridership and utilization graph does not provide, I think, is a sense of the day-to-day. So when we look at this, you'll notice the blue graphs. These are our boardings on weekdays. And we see an average of 101 in January with an increased utilization rate that reflected that. Fewer boardings are reported on both Saturdays and Sundays, with a subsequent impact on the utilization rate per hour. Our previous snapshot slide included the pilot's overall trend on rider rating. Between late November, when we initiated the in-app rider rating, and January 31st, 2023, riders rated their trips a 4.9 out of 5. As this graph illustrates, customers have reported significant customer satisfaction with micro, satisfaction that has been sustained over time, with a growing number of passengers willing to provide this valued input. As specifically to what elements they attributed these positive ratings, riders cited most often great drivers, quick trips, and friendly staff. Let's go to our next slide and discuss the locations to which passengers requested a micro trip. So as we turn to this pie chart, I want to highlight some assumptions upon which it is based. In the interest of customer privacy, we have opted to share only publicly destinations to which rides are requested and to group them into categories. The share of the pie associated with each category is based on the number of one-way trips completed, not necessarily the passengers that are traveling together. So turning to our pie, trips to private residence comprise the most significant category of destinations, which I think is as one might expect. The second most frequent destination category is comprised of retail locations and restaurants. Within this category and across the universe of requested destinations, Cub Foods is the most requested destination. Ranking third are education and schools. The most frequently requested trip in this category are to and from North Community High School, but there are a number of other learning institutions that are frequently requested. The fourth most frequently requested destination category are those that we've termed supportive residences. These are housing options specifically offered to support older adults, persons with disabilities, many of whom are persons with color and by default are almost always low income. These specific populations are among those for whom the pilot was intended to support and serve. Finally, about 3% of requested one-way trips are connections to the bus rapid transit system and to bus stops. Again, advancing the pilot's goal to expand access to the high-frequency network. This spring, we'll have an opportunity to understand more fully who the micro riders are, where they are going, and personally my own excitement around this idea of how they are using micro or other mobility options through a planned evaluation. I'm going to turn it back to Victoria to discuss the expansion of the service and the change in hours that began just yesterday.
Thank you. All right. Yep. So when we began this expansion, you may have seen the date, February 27th. We actually began rolling out the changes over Sunday, a little bit of a soft expansion, testing out the technology, making sure things were running smoothly for the big day today. So there are two components to the expansion and adjustments. The first is the geographic expansion, which we effectively doubled the size of our service area by expanding north of Lowry by a couple blocks up to 34th Avenue, and then also east of I-94 over to the Mississippi between Lowry and West Broadway. So really that expansion is really meant to help us generate more rides, develop greater demand, and to really optimize the resources that we already have available on the street for this service. So one thing that I did not mention up top was that since the outset of this pilot, we've had up to 5 vehicles available to be deployed on the street at any given time, plus operator resources for this pilot through transit team. And so the zone expansion will help keep those buses moving, help keep those drivers in service to riders throughout the day. The other component that I mentioned to adjustments is the span reduction. This is really in response to the past 5 to 6 months of rider activity early and late in the day. So instead of 5 a.m. to midnight all days of the week, on weekdays we'll be serving 5:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. and on weekends from 7 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. So those early and late night riders, they've been very sporadic and rare, and certainly not a daily occurrence, accounting for about 1% of total passenger activity since launching. So we feel fairly confident about our ability to continue serving those regular riders who are indeed riding mostly every day or nearly every day in the morning and in the evening. As I mentioned, we'll be testing Micro's capacity and performance with these service changes. So what does this mean for who and what all is in our zone when we expanded today? One will be increasing the number of jobs in the area, increasing by just about 77% of jobs from the original zone into the expansion zone. We'll also be increasing housing in the zone as well. That includes, as I've highlighted here, doubling the number of nursing homes in the zone, as well as increasing the number of public housing buildings in the zone. So that does not equate to individual units. Those are just address points as reported by federal public housing data. We'll also be increasing school access as well. We know that schools ranging from anything from childcare to older students are popular with this service and utilized. So we are responding to that demand with this expansion as well. And of course, we'll be expanding access to the fixed route network as well, including the addition of the Route 32 on Lowry Avenue, which will now have potential connections with Micro. So moving forward with this expansion, we have been in this past month looking toward marketing and outreach to community members and organizations and other stakeholders, including online and print media communications. We will be ongoing with this process over probably the next couple of weeks to ensure that we're getting information out into folks' hands and making sure that people are aware that the expansion has occurred and that it might be available to them now. We'll also be providing this information in translated forms. So Spanish, Hmong, and Somali were the 3 languages that we identified in our expansion as warranting additional language services and needs for this expansion. As Sheila mentioned, we'll be heading into a spring evaluation, essentially a mid-pilot evaluation for this service, where we'll be doing a deeper dive into various aspects of the pilot, including a survey, both for riders, but we also want to learn from folks who may be not using the service or might live in the zone, but we want to know who is both on the service and who might not be on the service. We want to understand more about ridership, trip patterns, purposes, and destinations. We also want to understand the cost of the service, as well as the relationship of microtransit to other existing services, whether it be fixed route, transit link, or metro mobility. And I'll also throw in maybe other suburban microtransit services as well. Then in summer of this year, we're going to be looking forward to incorporating all of that information and feedback from the survey, from our quantitative analysis, into determining what our next steps are. As I mentioned, this is a 12-month pilot. What I did not mention was that we do have the option to extend potentially for up to another 12 months if we determine that that is the course of action we want to take. So that there are still many exciting decisions to be made over the next few months.
Now we'll stand for questions
All
from
right.
the committee.
Thank you both. Questions, comments from the council members? Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is really exciting. I thought the project was just terrific, and so to see such positive results so early on is really exciting, and obviously it'll be fun to watch and see what additional information you come up with. I'm curious, how does this ridership compare with what the expectation was when the project was developed?
I think it's fair to say that while ridership was always going to be metrically looked at, I don't think there was an attempt to begin the project with some stated set goal, because that was part of the launch of the pilot, was to see how do people jump into this? Are they interested? So I'm not aware there was a numeric goal set. It was a metric, however, we were going to track over time to see if growth was occurring, rather than just we know success when we hit this arbitrary number. I think we were interested in seeing growth and the diversity of the trips. If we see expansion, are we going to see more folks? So not trying to avoid the question, but to point out that we didn't have a set number. I think we wanted to see how it grew organically through the work itself.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions? Councilmember Pacheco? And then
How do you foresee how this would pay for itself then? And how do you, me as a rider, how would I get? Is it like Lyft? I just call and say?
Indeed. There is an app, and Victoria is very good at explaining the app. And there are two, as she mentioned, there is an app, and I'll let Victoria speak to that. But then for those who don't have an app or a smartphone, they can also call in to transit team and set up a trip. If you're on the phone, you're setting it up with your customer ID number, providing your pickup address and your destination address. And then they'll give you a sense of your expected time to wait for that vehicle to come pick you up. Do you want to discuss how you do it through the app?
Certainly, yeah. So in the app interface, it does look a lot like an Uber or a Lyft, where you are entering or modifying your origin, your destination. You can also add up to 4 additional riders. So as Sheila had mentioned earlier, we know that certainly a lot of our riders on micro are adding that extra passenger and riding together. And once the rider hits search on that trip request, the software will kick back to them an offer and say, hey, we can do this ride in X number of minutes. Do you want to confirm the trip? At that point, the rider can confirm the trip and await their pickup, or decline and maybe they try another day. Essentially then at pickup, once they're actually at the bus, they in the app, you can track live where your vehicle is, and the vehicle should be routed to your approximate location, give or take, maybe a few meters to make sure that you're being picked up at a safe, visible location. There sometimes is a little bit of coordination with our dispatchers, just making sure that riders and drivers are meeting each other in the right place. Once you're at that pickup, that's where you would do your payment, your fare payment like you would on any regular route bus. So if you have a go-to card or a student pass or any other kind of existing fare media, you can use that on Metro Transit Micro. You can also pay in cash. It's fully equipped on board, just like any regular fixed route bus would be, and the fares are also the same.
May I just add one thing that we didn't highlight? Each of the vehicles that are operating are also ADA accessible. So one of the options, if you're using the app or you're calling in, is to say, I will be boarding with a wheelchair. And so I think that's an important consideration. One of the issues that often confronts people with disabilities who are using a Lyft or an Uber is that that vehicle is not accessible for them. They can't get it, they don't have the lift, they can't store their wheelchair. These are ADA accessible. We do have a number of folks who use it very regularly who are boarding, and they are boarding with a wheelchair. They've identified that they need that service.
And I believe Director Carlson has part of your answer.
Yeah, Madam Chair, one piece of this is around the cost, and it very much is a pilot program to see what the both what the demand is, but also what kind of public support is required for this level of service. I think one thing we're very interested to continue to track is, are there customers who may be using Metro Mobility today but could use this as an alternate service? If so, it could present a fairly significant cost savings from a typical Metro Mobility trip, but also could present really what I think the spirit of the ADA is after, which is an on-demand type service for those kinds of trips. So having that amount of flexibility where you're not scheduling a day ahead of time, it's truly on demand, could be a significant benefit for some of our customers as we consider, advancing and continuing this pilot.
Councilmember.
Madam Chair, actually, I see this as really a family-friendly vehicle. I mean, I grew up with 3 brothers, 3 sisters, and neither of my parents drove a car. But you couldn't even get in a cab. I mean, you have to get everybody lined up, get them on the bus, and that happens today. So I'm glad you're looking at other languages. I'm curious to know if you'd be able to track increase in ridership after the close of Walgreens and Aldi over north.
It's interesting, just as we were setting this, getting the expansion zone set, then we found out that Aldi's was closing. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the types of destinations for which were requested. Are we going to see an increase in the Cub, other options? And we'll be happy to report back to you. Yep.
And to that, Madam Chair, I'd also add there's a Hy-Vee in Robbinsdale that's just outside the zone that we're serving with the expanded area. So this next step is a stress test of, can the capacity we have built into this service manage the demand that we see, and what happens from there is going to be the next step. Certainly, conditions on the ground for the community we are serving with this service are changing. With the loss of 2 important retailers, and how can we adapt our services as the council to meet continued needs for retail destinations in this community that may or may not be served well by regular route bus, depending on what your origin is. And many of the areas in the micro service area are not directly connected through Metro Transit bus, and so needing to transfer in groceries and things like that may not be a good fit for a population with a need for assistance in meeting mobility needs. Metro Transit Micro fits very much into filling that gap.
Okay, Councilmember Fredson?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a couple questions. I'm curious to know what the rides per hour per driver goal, or what the capacity is, and I'm just looking at the the numbers, if I'm reading this right, it's approximately 7.5 minutes per ride, and then the average is 2 rides per driver per hour. So that leads me to believe that you have folks waiting around for the next ride request to come in. And I guess how that would factor into how many folks that we have waiting for the, providing the rides. And then the second question I have is just related to the trip request destinations. I'm curious to know what the, were there pleasant surprises? Were there disappointments? Just kind of what your read was in terms of what jumped out at you. I was kind of surprised to see so few trips to other, like, I think one of the big goals here was to connect people to other transit service, right? So that was a relatively low percentage. And it's also not clear to me where jobs would be, like if people are getting rides to jobs. And I'm assuming that's probably, I don't know if that question was asked, if it's considered business and manufacturing, or if they work at a school, if that sort of falls into that education bucket.
Certainly, yeah. I'll start in the reverse order with some of those destination type questions. We were a little bit surprised at the share of destinations that were to BRT stations and bus stops. We knew when we decided to make this a point-to-point pilot where you can have a ride from any origin to any destination in the zone, that those first last mile trips wouldn't be necessarily maybe the biggest draw for riders who are maybe just interested in that neighborhood trip. But a big caveat here is that we're really relying on the software data to tell us where people are going and how they're making connections. But we have additional sources of information that will help paint hopefully a more accurate picture of folks connecting to and from fixed route. Anybody who is using a go-to card, for example, we have information about how trips are being linked within that transfer period. So if somebody, say, got off of a Route 14 and connected to Micro, we'd be able to understand that relationship from the go-to card transfer data. There's a little bit less clarity when it comes to arterial bus rapid transit, just due to the nature of kind of the platform boardings and off-board payment. But we hope that we can dig into that transfer data and supplement it with that go-to card information, and also with our survey data as well, being able to ask people directly, do you use the service to connect with fixed route? Do you use it to get outside the zone, perhaps? Certainly we know that many people's lives are not often bounded in a small 2.5 square mile area, and that they might have other places that they need to go. So we'll be really excited to learn more about that interaction with fixed route in the spring. And to your other question about jobs, destinations, job purposes, we know, again, from our software data, what are the lat longs and addresses that folks want to go to, but we don't necessarily know the purpose. We can infer a little bit about that. There are some anecdotal pieces of information that we have from customers, but it, again, will take some surveying to understand why folks are riding, if it's for work, if it's some other trip purpose or an errand, picking up somebody or dropping off somebody are also all possibilities. We hope that with this expansion, we'll also be able to serve more job sites, specifically east of I-94, between I-94 and the Mississippi, where we know that there's no current fixed route up Washington or 2nd in that area, but there are jobs in manufacturing and other kinds of warehouse, recycling and things of that nature. So we're hoping to make that connection.
Perfect. Madam Chair and council members, I knew this question was going to come up, and I'm so glad you asked it. So I went back and looked at utilization rate by time of day, which is not a slide we showed you. So we showed you we got to 2 rides per hour in the month of January. However, between 12 and 2:59 p.m., so afternoon to early afternoon, our utilization rate is at about 11 per hour. between 3 and 5:59, so after school, before dinner, it runs at about 9.7 per hour. And then in the morning, between 9 and roughly 11:59, not to put too fine a point on it, we're at about 8.4 an hour. So we're giving you an average overview, but we definitely see significant peaks throughout the day. And if that's information that's of interest, we'll definitely bring that back to you as we move forward.
Yeah, I think that would be fascinating information. I think it kind of ties to some of what we're seeing in some of our ridership trends in general. So I would be curious to track that, I think, as well. All right, additional questions, comments? Councilmember Sterner.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I was just going to, just a couple on the food is one of my fortes. I like food, but they talked about like the Market Cub was the most popular, but the other grocery stores like the North Market and that, did you get much attendance there? And also there's quite a few community convenience stores in the area. Is there a fairly one where they go down to the store and grab a bag for safety and things like that? Does that come up much?
We have seen other locations where food can be purchased also show up. The farmers market at Lindale is actually one that we see quite frequently or saw before they closed for winter. There are a number of smaller groceries, Penn Market, and there's some others that we do see some ridership associated with. Cub, I think, has been sort of that anchor store in that community. And so right now, that is the most requested destination, but there are other food options. I will point out that one of the food sources that we do see requests for rides is it Shiloh Faith Missionary Church, which has an active food shelf program, and those trips tend to happen on weekdays. And then North Point has a community food shelf also at at one of their locations, and we do see frequent riders going to those locations as well.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, I just have a couple of comments. I was really excited when we were putting this service into place, and these numbers are fantastic. I mean, I think we knew there was something here, but we didn't quite know what it would look like, to what you're saying. I'm really interested to the why people are taking trips piece of it. I think that's going to be very insightful for all of us. But really, this is fantastic work. And to transit team, one of the comments I heard today was great drivers, quick trips, and friendly staff. And I would love you to relay that back to your organization because that's what keeps people coming back over and over. So thank you very much. All right, anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, now we turn it over to Leslie and Charles to talk about our committee work plan. I don't know which one of you is kicking it off.
So I can start things, Madam Chair and committee members. We have a updated draft of the work plan incorporating a number of items that we did not include last time around, but you'll see a number of additional MTS planning items in this updated draft. A couple things that we've heard both from council, committee of the whole discussions and elsewhere is I think in the business item that was before the committee last time on the safety targets for the region, the roadway serious injury and fatality targets. One of the pieces from that that we're working on is the regional safety action plan that would look at causes, solutions, and approaches. So we've incorporated that in the third quarter as an update item. That work is underway. So another thing I'll call attention to is potential discussion. Looking for which quarter we placed it in. In the end of the second quarter on transportation and climate change policy as a planned piece of our work, but also as something that the council expressed interest in the new vision for the 2050 Regional Development Guide. So responding to a few things like that, but I think continuing to look for any input, and then we would likely also seek input from the next committee as any new council members are placed, and have them actually adopt it, but want to make sure that the existing committee is providing its input before we're actually at that action step. Turn it over to Leslie.
Sure. Madam Chair, committee members, I would say from the Metro Transit side, the way we built this is we had all of our departments look at the work ahead, look at what they had previously brought this committee, and really tried to hold ourselves to a reasonable number of information items that we feel would potentially be of interest to this committee, but very open to feedback and ideas. Some of what you'll see on here are really items we brought year over year, in some cases quarter over quarter. So for example, tonight you heard the quarterly service and workforce update. We plan to do those each quarter for you. Before the end of this quarter, we hope to do our Metro Transit Strategic Plan update for you. We refreshed our strategic plan for 2023 and would like to bring quarterly updates on that work as well. And there's some newer work in here. Certainly the Network Now updates are new, and some various transitway updates that'll happen throughout the year are new as well. Finally, I'll say there are some things that you're not seeing on here that will be on the full council's agenda. So either as information items to the full council or to the committee of the whole. So for example, we're going to continue quarterly updates from the Metro Transit Police Department and the Safety and Security Action Plan work. So that's not here, but that is work that will be on those council agendas. I know our capital programs area is preparing a transitway update for the full council again. So some of the decisions we've been trying to make is what should come here, what should come to the full council, and would very much welcome council member feedback on that as well.
Okay, council members, any thoughts?
Looks busy.
You've been a member of the committee for a long time. It is busy. All right. Well, if you do, please, by all means, send them to Leslie and Charles. We'll get everything incorporated. So before we conclude our business tonight, I do want to recognize that we've got 3 council members who serve on this committee who are not returning. 2 are here tonight. One is Councilmember Zarin, who couldn't be here, but we've got Councilmember Fredson and Councilmember Cummings. This is a hard committee with a lot of work, and I cannot thank you all enough for everything that you have done. And really just thank you for your service, and you are going to be very missed, all of you. Okay, all right, good enough. All right, with that, I entertain a motion to adjourn. And is there a second?
Second.
And all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned. Yes.